JD, it's good to be with you, brother. Yeah, and we just want to do a quick follow-up with a debate that JD had with Joe McDurmon and the whole Theonomy debate. So I just wanted to walk through some of these things with JD here, and we're enjoying a nice week here at Shepherd's Conference.
Beautiful.
We just got done listening to R.C. Sproul. Yeah. That was entertaining. R.C. Sproul is one of my favorites, so Shepherd's Conference never disappoints. So it's good to be here. Good to be here with you. Tell us, before we get started with the debate issue, tell us a little bit about your church. Tell us a little bit about Reformation Montana, all of that.
Yeah, so I'm the pastor at Fellowship Baptist Church in Sidney, Montana. Sidney is a town of about 5,000 people. The entire county has only about 9,000 people, so that's about 6 people per square mile, basically. Wow. So not exactly a major metropolitan area. And we're only a couple hours from Canada and a few minutes from North Dakota, so a long ways from nowhere. But we started what's called Reformation Montana. We're very isolated up there, most people in Montana are, and so we started RefMont about 4 or 5 years ago to be able to network Reformed Baptists together. That's what Reformation Montana is for. And so we have a conference every year, and it started 4 years ago. Paul Washer was one of our speakers, along with Phil Johnson. Phil's actually come every year. We've had speakers like James White, Vody Bacham, Chris Roseborough.
So it's not just Reformed Baptist guys?
It's, mostly. Chris is
Chris and Phil.
An odd duck, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and Phil, but Calvinistic, maybe that's a better term.
Got it.
So, this year we have Mike Abendroth, Todd Friel, Phil Johnson, Chris Roseborough, all the big podcasts.
Cool.
So we're excited about that. That's June 25th through 27th. And it's going to be at Billings, Montana, the Holiday Inn and Convention Center where it was last year. I'll be speaking too, so we're looking forward to that. And I hope the conference grows again this year. So looking forward to it.
Very good. Yeah. Very good. How big's your church?
We have about 150 or so people, so we're not huge, but we're in the middle of the prairie. There are more antelope than people there.
It's a lot of people for being where you're at.
Yeah, we feel blessed to have what we have, given where we're at geographically. So we're an hour from Walmart. That gives most people a point of reference as to how rural that we are.
Right.
Like 700 miles from the closest Chick-fil-A.
I see.
So in the middle of nowhere. So we're blessed to have what we have.
That's great. Well, I hope the Lord will bless your church, continue blessing the ministry there for you. Yeah, I look forward to seeing what God does. Yeah, good. Well, JD, let's talk about this debate that you did with Joe McDurmon from American Vision. A lot of people watch the debate, and so I want to walk through some of the issues that happened in the debate. I mean, a lot happened. It was a long debate. It was a couple hours, and I took a lot of notes. I took meticulous notes, but I kind of want to hit some of the highlights of the debate. And just, I know, you don't got your notes in front of you or anything, so you're not going to recall everything, but just we're definitely interested to hear your thoughts on some of these issues. So, the opening statement, Joel began, by laying out the case out of 1 Timothy 1:8.
Right.
Why is 1 Timothy 1:8 not a theonomous passage?
Well, it tells us that the law is good when one uses it lawfully. So the question is, what does that mean to use it lawfully? And he said, well, if we use the law, we have to use it in accordance to the law, which would make sense. But the real inference there is that we're using the law lawfully according to how God would have us to use it. So the question is, how would God have us to use the law? So then I pointed to places in the New Testament where we see how the Apostle Paul or Peter or other apostolic writers would use the law and how they used the law. And as I pointed out in the debate, at no point did the apostolic writers in the New Testament demonstrate that the civil code is for the magistrate today, but that the civil code given to the Commonwealth of Israel, and by the way, if you notice, I said that phrase like at least 50 times in the debate, and he never contradicted me.
I did notice,
The civil code given to the Commonwealth of Israel, at no point do we see that applied to the civil magistrate today. It's always applied to the church. In 1 Corinthians chapter 5, we're told to purge the evil person from among you. There's 7 different times in the book of Deuteronomy that's used in reference to the civil code, in purging the wicked person from the community. But now it's given to the church. Or don't muzzle the ox, the laborer is worthy of his wages, referencing the civil code. This is how Paul uses the civil code to inform the church as to our responsibilities to God and to one another.
Yeah.
And that's how we use the law lawfully. And I think what theonomists do, they point to the law, such as the passage in 1 Timothy, and say, see, we're supposed to use it. We are supposed to use it. No one wants to throw it away. Right. The question is, how do we use it? And the answer has to be, we use it like Paul used it. And it's never for the civil magistrate today. It's for the church. It's for the Christian.
So, Joel made a point that in that passage out of 1 Timothy, that the law has certain pedagogical uses for the believer, but then he says that it's for civil use. And so my natural question for me was, so when a believer commits murder or a heinous crime like adultery or something, so then it doesn't have civil application to the believer?
Well, first of all, how does Paul use it? He uses it in reference to the church to let us know how much God hates sin. That's the pedagogical use, where the law, as Galatians says, is a pedagogue for us until the seed has come, until Christ has come. So it informs us how much God hates sin when we see the severity of that punishment in the civil code. However, we see in the New Testament the civil magistrate is still there as a minister of God to reward or praise the good and punish the wicked. The question isn't, should the civil magistrate punish the wicked? The question is, how does the civil magistrate craft law in order to punish the wicked? Right. The Theonomy says it has to be the civil code and nothing but the civil code. The rest of us say it's the entire canon of Scripture, and in particular, it's God's moral law. And that's what I was trying to point out in 1 Timothy chapter, or 1 Peter chapter 2, that we're told to submit to human ordinances, catissus anthropinus. That would be ordinances, laws. Sometimes it's translated institutions, but institutions in a legal setting are subscribed and created by laws. Human laws that are fulfilling the purpose of punishing the wicked and rewarding the good. The Theonomists would argue there's no way of knowing what's wicked or knowing what's good without the civil code. And I would say, no, there is. It's the moral law. This is the law that's written upon our hearts, and this is what the magistrate uses to punish the wicked and praise the good.
One of the other things that Joel said in his opening statement was, if the law is just, it is obligatory. Now, I mean, I believe the law is just.
Sure.
Because of Romans 7, it says it's good, it's holy, it's righteous, all these things. I mean, am I committing a logical fallacy because I think it is just, but it's not obligatory?
No, here's where the logical fallacy lay. In the presumption, not necessarily that if it's just, it's unchanging, although that in part is part of the fallacy, but also that if it is just, it is the only just punishment. Okay? So, do you have a son?
I don't.
You don't. Do you have a daughter?
I have a wife.
You have a wife.
And a dog.
Okay, and I said, well, that makes it harder. I've got a son and a daughter. They may commit the same crime, the same sin, and I may punish them differently. Because I punish them differently, it does not mean that one of those punishments is just and one of them has to be unjust. And we see that because God punishes different people differently for the same sin in Scripture. So the Theonomy is saying if it's just, it's unchanging, and if it changes, it's therefore unjust. You would have to accuse God of being unjust because God let Cain go. That was murder. He kills Ananias and Sapphira, giving them the death penalty for something that was not a death penalty or a capital offense in Commonwealth Israel. Is God unjust? Now, I asked my opponent that in debate, and he said, well, God can punish people however he wants. That's true. But the issue is, when we look at the penalties in the Mosaic Law, we have to ask the question, are these penalties intrinsically tied to God's immutable nature and attributes? And the answer is they can't be, because God changes what he feels is just per individual, for the individual. So can we find times where God acts contrary to the civil code? Yes. Can you find times where God acts contrary to his moral law? God forbid. Never once can you find a time where God violates his moral law.